Hello, everybody. How we doing? You can interact. We're going to get excited tonight. Welcome to Adorama. And if you're tuning in from Adorama TV, welcome. My name is Mike Corrado, and I am here to talk to you tonight about photography and rock and roll in general and the power of personal projects. But I'll give you a little background on me, show you a few photographs to get us warmed up. Whenever I talk to people or get in front of a crowd, I like to talk about photography in general. Just because a lot of us are versatile in what we do, and not everybody locks into one genre of photography. And one of my mentors, who is connected to this store, Joe McNally, considers himself a generalist, and so do I. I like to be able to photograph just about anything, anywhere, and then I lock into personal projects to the things that I really, really love. I've been with Nikon for a long time. I'm a manager within Nikon for pro relations, and I've also established a group called the Ambassador Program. I'll give you a little history of me with Nikon, but I'm really here to talk to you about photography tonight. This is not a program where I'm going to sell you anything. You have your camera system. We'd certainly love for you to be shooting the Nikon brand and understand why. But you've chosen a system, and let's work within that system to understand a little bit more about what you want to do here. And since you're here, I would think performance arts or rock or shooting a stage type show is something that you're interested in. We'll talk a little bit about everything. You'll hear me constantly use the words impact, energy, and emotion, because I have a philosophy after doing this for many, many years, decades of shooting, that if every photograph you take has a little bit of that in it, a little impact, a little energy, and it draws emotion, then you have three key components to making very powerful, successful, dynamic images. And I want to talk to you about personal projects, in particular Drummer Love, something that was started about 6 years ago, kind of as a last minute, somebody asked me a question, do I want to do something while Nickelback was touring? And it snowballed into one of the biggest projects I've ever worked on, which has no end, which is the beauty of personal projects. You start something, you don't think about ending or wherever it's going to end up. That all starts to evolve, and it snowballs into a better idea, and that idea that you may have had up front shifts into something else, and all kinds of tangents happen, and some amazing things start to happen as you go. But rock and roll is what has excited me the most in photography over the last several years. As a house photographer for Live Nation, for about the last 9 to 10 years, I've had a lot of work that I've done from the pits, but tried to establish relationships with different bands. And the dynamics of rock and roll, especially shooting from the pit, tend to at times, put us in a situation where photographs tend to look the same, because you're right next to somebody with the same focal length lens and the action is happening. If you're shooting at the same time, you're making similar pictures. But I'll be the first one to say, that doesn't matter. Your agenda is different than the person next to yours. So whatever it is you're going to shoot and capture, grab it. Hold on to it. It's yours. And if it's unique to you, and it's unique to whoever you're shooting for, or even if it's just for yourself, don't hold back, let it go. Don't worry about who's around you. We'll talk about pits and that. The dynamics of rock and roll and performance arts and stage include lighting. And I think about lighting all the time and all the work we do, and the work in photography that I do. And to me, light is the key. The quality of light is the key. I may say it once or twice here. If you do work in this world and you shoot a lot of concerts, if there's a great light show, find that lighting person and kiss them on the lips, because they will make your photography better with the lighting dynamic of that show. But look for things like you would in any other genre of photography in the way of lighting, whether it's front light, back light. We'll talk a little bit about all of this in the work that I do. And then this project that I've connected with called Drummer Love. I don't know, maybe in another life I'll be a drummer. Maybe by, within the next few years I'll take the drum pad my daughter gave me for Christmas and actually use it and take drum lessons. But I've always felt like drummers they dictate the pace, right? You listen to music, right? We all love music maybe, a certain genre of music. When the drum beat goes fast, what does our heart start to do? Our breath we start to race a little bit. When the drum beat slows down, it dictates how we start to slow down too, and it definitely controls the pace of the band. And when you're on stage and you're watching them all listening through their ears, one person's off and the tempo's off, it throws everybody off. So the drummer is about tempo. To me, if I go even further, spiritually for me, it's about the heartbeat, the drive of the heartbeat, and how we're connected that way. But I'll talk to you about this project called Drummer Love that evolved out of just a simple few questions and now has turned into something probably that's out of my control, but I love that it's out of my control because it just keeps going on and on and on. I hail from New York. Everybody here from New York or Long Island? I was born in Long Island, Westbury, Long Island, and I spent quite a little bit of time here before I joined Nikon, and within the first few years ended up in California for 9 years and then came back. I am a New York boy. And I would say the greatest influence I've ever had in photography was my dad. My mother was an artist, a painter, an illustrator. Nothing professional, she just loved to do it. But my dad was an engineer and photographer. He had all of his cameras, his Speed Graphics, all these cameras back in the day when he was a newspaper photographer for his school. And he loved it. He built a darkroom in the house, and this may sound similar to a lot of you, if you're old enough like me, that somebody had a darkroom in your home and you got into the darkroom and you found that fascination of the print starting to come to life and you were sold at that point. It kind of locked you in. I went to school for art. But my dad always had said it's one thing to know the answer to a question, it's another thing to understand why. And not only does that apply to his way of thinking statistically, but it applies to everything I do in photography. If you understand your subject and understand the behaviors or understand what that particular subject is all about, you can anticipate better as to what's going to happen next. And yes, it's a guess, and the luck comes in. But it's all about the guess, but trying to make an educated guess when you're working. 33 years, I'm in my 34th year at Nikon. So I've been around the business for a very long time. The transitions from film to digital to working through computers as opposed to printing in wet baths. Does anybody remember the smell of Fixer? I think I still smell Fixer. It's in my brain. Maybe it's deteriorated some brain cells, and I'm starting off very calm with you guys, but it may start to grow and you may see the byproduct of all the chemistry in my brain. But I've had a great run, and Nikon, when I came in, I thought I was actually good at photography, and I realized very quickly that I had a lot to learn. And the beauty of working at Nikon, I started in customer communications. Back in the day, there were actually these things called typewriters. And people hand wrote and typed letters with questions about products. We'd look the answers up in the manuals, and we'd send them a typed letter back if we didn't get on the phone with them. And that's all now evolved into a computer database of the way we communicate with our customers now. But that was 30 some odd years ago. But in the back of the room was a locker with all of the best lenses and best cameras that you could take out for the weekend, and that's probably what propelled me more than anything, because there was a beautiful lady named Doris who was an amazing photographer, and I was so inspired by her work, and it made me want to be so much more involved. As I graduated into this, became a product manager, got involved with technical support, worked for Nikon Pro Services. A lot of the work I did was on campaigns, ad campaigns, print campaigns, production, DVDs. I've recently done some directing for Nikon with a project that we did at Disney. I'd go on as tech support, and at the same time working with print campaigns like this. Sandro Miller, one of our ambassadors out of Chicago, was there shooting with the D3 when it first came out. We wanted to prove to the world that the D3 with a 14mm lens in really bad conditions where you needed some great ISO would make the shot that he needed, and it did. But a lot of times I work either as a stunt photographer. You know what a stunt photographer is? We have an amazing talent that we're working with. They're on camera being interviewed, and I have to do pickup shots that we need for the shoots, and that's all a part of the game. So a lot of times I'll cover off angles with longer lenses based on what that photographer does. They engineer the whole shoot. I give them all the credit for bringing all the elements together, and then I capture pictures from another angle so they can look at them and say, well, maybe that's the place we want to go. It may not serve the purpose for the ad, but it is a great background filler type image. A lot of TV commercials. We did a lot of campaign work with Ashton Kutcher through the years, and I got to tech support a lot of that stuff too. It's not a difficult job when you have to teach someone like Ashton Kutcher how to hold a camera and show them the very basics of the camera and let them understand how they need to hold it so the customer sees it, how they want to work with it, what lenses they want to use in what situations. And someone like Ashton actually took pride in the work, so wasn't the kind of guy that wanted to step back. He actually wanted to learn photography as he went, and he got better as we went along. And then you shoot end result around the set. So those pictures end up in the insets of the commercials, inside the camera LCDs within the commercials. So it's a lot of fun. A lot of times doing portrait work while I'm working on other campaigns, again, as tech support. This was a web-based program that we were running with 3 photographers. Troy House from Brooklyn here, an amazing commercial photographer. My job was to shoot black and white portraits of all of them out in the field because the campaign was all shot in black and white. And then there were interviews involved, and you have to, as a Nikon tech person, you have to make sure they're saying the right things. It's not Nikkor, it's Nikkor. The pronunciations, how you say AFS or silent wave lens, what the technology is. and do the best job you can to get them through that. If you've seen this great phenomenon, this beautiful uprise in VR, Nikon introduced an action line. Just recently, Joe McNally and I had worked together. He had this brainstorm idea to put a bunch of 360 cameras around a biplane with a wing walker. And it's probably one of the more fun projects we've had. I don't have the work here yet. It's about to be released at Citi Field when the Mets open up. But we actually just had spring training. We put cameras on catchers. We put cameras within the bullpen. We put cameras in the dugouts. So the fan that comes to the field will put on goggles at the activation, and they'll see that they can immerse themselves into the world of the New York Mets. If you're a Yankee fan, sorry, it's not as exciting. If you're a Mets fan, certainly. You're standing right next to Noah Syndergaard as he's warming up in the bullpen, and then they have a ritual where they shake hands. The entire team comes out at spring training to the bullpen, so they shake hands and give high fives as they go through. There's a lot of education to be had, and it has been through the transition of film to digital. Did everybody feel a little leery when you made the transition? If you had to make the transition, if you're young enough to not know what film is or have shot with film, good for you. But there was that transition. And if you remember back early on, especially when there was much lower resolutions, much less resolution, what was a JPEG? You know, what were file formats? How do you save a file? How do you share a file? What's the byproduct of using TIFF versus JPEG? We had to educate people through this whole process as we were educating ourselves. So I worked on quite a few DVDs that allowed people to understand the basis of what digital was all about. The biggest thing, though, I want to connect with you here on, outside of all the other things that I have done, is your work and your photography and your passion for being here. If you're here and you come out after a day's work or not to sit and listen to a program about photography, you must have an inner passion that I think we all share together. And that's what drives me to get up every day of the week, weekend, to just go out and try to create something new. And I always have this feeling that if you go out at any time and you make one picture that you're happy with, you've had a great day. If you make 10 pictures that you're happy with, you've had an outstanding day. But just strive for the one, and I think it's that thing you go back and you put the images, you load them into the computer, you look at them, and you take that step back and go, man, that's something I've never done before, or I've done it before, it's just a little bit different. And that's how I drive myself. I believe in these words when it comes to photography. You have to be versatile, you have to be able to execute, you certainly need consistency when you shoot, and it is the power of relationships that will take you further. As you get good at this craft, as you strengthen your skills, the skill sets and the fundamentals have not changed through the decades. F-stops are F-stops, shutter speeds are shutter speeds, and the way you approach photography creatively is based on what you're thinking and what you're trying to accomplish. And then we trip into what I call those happy accidents, those things you never expect to find. And the beauty of what I'm doing with drummers and what the project called Drummer Love, which is about remote cameras on drum kits, the fun of that is as you're looking through all these pictures after a concert, you find something that you never anticipated happening. And there's still such really great happy accidents. But I love sports, I love action. I'm going to roll through these relatively quick. I'm an action person. I like moments. I like fleeting moments. Maybe some of you can associate with that. Moments in time that if you miss the moment, it's never going to come back. And that's your challenge, to be prepared, to take a shot. Luckily, we have cameras that will run at 12 frames per second. Okay, you've got, the opportunity to create these great moments, but to me, it's not about running off 50 frames in a row. What is that 1/12 of a second going to do for you? How is that going to stop action? How is that going to stop time? How are you going to anticipate what's going to happen and then shoot off a burst of 3, not 20, to make a picture happen, work more efficiently? But I love sports. I thought I was going to be a baseball player, then I thought I was going to be a football player, and neither one of those things worked out well beyond high school, so I kind of gave up on that. But my love of sports took me into sports photography before anything else. And I'll talk about the little tricks that I've learned, the fundamentals, and if it's redundant to what you know, I apologize, but maybe it's a refresher to you. What do they teach you in sports? If you know the sport, you can anticipate. Follow through. Don't just watch that goal go in and shoot that. Watch as the jubilation starts to happen, the community comes together, they start to hug. Anybody play soccer or football, as they call it in Europe? Can you explain this shot to me, though, when the celebration goes a bit too far, where it just gets a little bit too extreme? I mean, but you follow that action through, and you work with that as you go, and you make pictures. Thunderous horses. I love photographing horses. I don't bet or gamble, but for many years I spent time at the Kentucky Derby working for a magazine called The Blood Horse. And to me, there's nothing more beautiful than horses running, but how do you challenge yourself to do that, protect yourself on the rainiest day at Monmouth Park, during a race called the Breeders' Cup, and make a different type of photo. Horses running on a beautiful track on a beautiful day. After a while, everything starts to look the same. Where can you shoot? How can you shoot? What angle can you take to make a more powerful image? Impact, energy, emotion. The emotion of a victory, the impact of the horses running at you, the energy the horses have as they're running at you. That's what you want to see. The jubilation after the win of a race of a Kentucky Derby. Celebration, getting people to respond to that. This picture may do something for you. You will connect with pictures. Anybody into horse racing? If you're into horse racing, you may be more involved in this picture. Otherwise, you may say, can you please hit that button and move on, because this is doing nothing for me. It's what you're connecting with me. You're never going to please everybody, because everybody's got something different that they love. But I've worked within this magazine, within the Blood Horse magazine for many, many years, did a lot of stories. Aqueduct is a racetrack out here on the island. They run in the winter. We had to do a story. I convinced them, let's run this story in black and white. Black and white just felt colder to me than a beautiful blue sky on a colored day. You couldn't tell. So, you know, you try different things, you push for different things. I love details. One of the things I think we should all strive for is taking our viewers to a place that they just can't exist or they just don't see, right? If you're looking at a bunch of horses on a muddy track in the middle of the day, do you see the spur of one of the outriders? But with a 600mm lens, tight in, taking a chance, wasting a few frames, not only do you draw them into that, but you draw them into the detail, the art, you know, the art around the spur, the shoe itself, and of course that grit and texture of the mud hopefully appeals to the people that are looking at it. I put this picture in my shows because it's one of the most amazing pictures that I didn't really care for early on. And it was a woman at Nikon who used to run Nikon school, Ellen, who said to me, I love that picture. And I said, all right, well, what does it for you? Because I tried, I took the camera, shot long telephoto into the mud as the horses were jogging by. Horses aren't running here, they're jogging, but you're trying to create the motion in the mud. And she said something that will always stick with me and remind me that this is a subjective art. What you shoot, some people will love, some people won't. Some people are going to see things you never thought about in that photo. She said, I love the cat running across the track. Look at the photo for a second. Do you see the cat? People out in Adorama TV land are going, what are you talking about? In this little area where the mud is making a shape, you see the shape of a black cat. And again, it's what your photograph does to somebody else that draws them in. Of course, because of that, I started looking around the photograph and I said, all right, well, that's a dinosaur skull, and those are bunny ears. Maybe that's Felix the cat. Someone at the last program had said that's an octopus. But that's the beauty, the subjective nature of photography, and what everybody sees is going to be a little bit different. The power of light, the power of suggestion of color. A very cool day after the horses come off the track at Churchill Downs, working with the words luck and serendipity, and I will take anything, use anything to have a photograph become successful. So when horses come off a track, they're warm, right? Cold water comes on, they bathe them. A little bit of steam comes off the horses. But the predominance of steam is not coming off the horses. What do you think that steam is in the background of this image? By pure luck, that's the vat that they throw all the horse manure in. So it is hot, steamy horse manure that's creating that predominance of that steam. I will take anything with the sun coming through, kicking a little bit of color, works. Draw people in. Remember I was talking to you about that spur? How do you draw people in to see something a little bit different? And through that, draw them in with the isolation of maybe a longer telephoto lens, where you clearly see here with a wide angle, like a 24mm lens. This is the winner's circle at Churchill Downs. Look at all those photographers there shooting from the same angle. Talk about the pit shooting from the same angle. They're all shooting for a different organization. So they all have to make that shot that everybody wants to see on the cover. Horse finishes, wins the race, usually the cover shot, right, for the Blood Horse magazine. I ended up going on the roof of the winner's circle, the pagoda, and shooting down with a 2 to 400 zoom, so I had some flexibility in zooming. And as the jockey held the cup over his head, I started to notice, wow, the detail in that cup from everybody standing around is pretty magnificent. And as you start to zoom in more and more and more, you see more detail. Now I started to see faces, and you're reacting very quickly. And then all of a sudden, a hand comes out of nowhere. The owner reaches up and starts to grab for the cup. A great copywriter, great editors, and all of a sudden there's a cover that says within reach. And you can see the people, the parties, the jockey, the trainer, and the owner within the reflection of that cup. Always try to work a little bit differently. Draw people in with details. Tell different stories. 9/11. was a very tragic time in our world for everybody. But when horse racing came back to Belmont, after that, it was about American flags running in front of all the law enforcement agencies in New York. Bobby Flay, who would have known horse racing? Bobby Flay was a horse owner. I had to photograph him at one of his bars. This is truly what you would call that 2-minute portrait, where you have about 2 minutes of somebody's time and you're rushed into a situation. Queen of England comes to the Kentucky Derby. First time ever. She comes out. It was an editor from the Times-Picayune, one of my buddies, Alex Barkoff, great editor, said, "This is one of the best pictures you've ever taken." And I said, "Explain it." He said, "Because the Prime Minister and her husband are talking right through her, but she doesn't even know they're there because she's enjoying the moment." Snowiest day of the history of the Meadowlands. Did a lot of work with the New York Jets. Remember Chad Pennington was supposed to be the next Joe Montana, breaks his wrist. The career steadily goes downhill. You invest a lot of time in what we do in telling stories, and sometimes the stories don't pan out. Do a lot of work with the New York Mets. Nikon pulled a sponsorship with the Mets a year or so ago, and was still with them. 9/11, when the Mets came back, was one of the most powerful sports moments I've ever attended for a picture that is no better than average for a home run swing, which is Mike Piazza, who hits a home run in the bottom of the 8th against their nemesis, the Atlanta Braves, and they win the game. And the vibration in that moment in that stadium, at Shea Stadium, was like nothing I've ever felt, and I haven't felt since. Andy Chavez makes a great catch during the playoffs in 2007. My buddy Brian connects with this picture in a very negative way. Brian, who I work with, who's a big Mets fan, says, "Why do you show that? You constantly show that picture. Why do you do that?" I said, "Because that picture it's a nice catch." He said, "I hate that picture." I said, "Why?" "Because it reminds me that the Mets ended up losing that game in the bottom of the 9th. St. Louis, I think, hit a home run in the top of the 8th or the top of the 9th, and the Mets go on to lose." And the emotion within the image, look around. The thing that I love about an image like this is it's not so much the players, the jubilation of the Cardinal players, the dejection of the Met running by, but look at the fans grabbing on to the glass and the dejection that they feel. They've invested an entire season in the team, and they just wanted to go to the World Series and be like the Yankees. I know the Yankees fans feel that 27 times. I've heard it. Moments that tell quick stories. This is a farce, by the way. When they sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," there's a line that says, "If they don't win, it's a shame." Mr. Met does that every time. But for a while, Mets fans can appreciate this picture and understand it. But light, as we see it, working the World Series recently when the Mets were in the World Series 2 years ago, following the heroes, making pictures every moment, every pitch counts. Young kid comes out, Noah Syndergaard, after the Mets lose 2 games, and he throws right over the head of the first batter that gets up for the Royals, made a statement. And you got to be there prepared to shoot every one of those pictures. And it's about moments. The only moment that's not so fun is when another team celebrates on your field. And the team feels it, and they feel it throughout the entire winter. And so you're always looking to draw on that emotion, impact, energy, the emotion of David Wright here. Realizes he may not have a lot of shots left at doing this. And now another season's gone by, and they came that close. Very hard thing to go back to the World Series after you've lost. I love animals. I love photographing animals. Again, the emotion, the energy. I love young animals. We'll talk a little bit about the doggies. Don't worry. I do a lot of work with birds. One of my personal projects is the birds of Stony Brook. Anybody been out to Stony Brook, Long Island? The inlet, Stony Brook Lake, the Gristmill area? I went out there thinking there were nothing but ducks and swans and geese, and realized there are a plethora of birds there, from egrets to, blue heron, great blues, to cormorants. The cormorant's my favorite bird, a swimming bird. How much better does it get than a swimming bird? But the beauty of the eye of the cormorant, as I've learned, the teal when the light hits it, the colors of the blue, it's just outstanding. And a lot of this work is done with telephotos, 500 millimeter, 600 millimeter lenses, 2x teleconverters, all different kinds of cameras. But my greatest package right now for doing this kind of work is the D500 and a 2-to-500 zoom. So easy and light to carry around. I love when the birds fly right at you. And I heard this a long time ago from a sports photographer. It's something that stuck with me as well, is if you're not there to make the pictures, how are you going to make them? If you don't hang in there, how are you going to make the pictures? We tend to give up a little too quick. I love going to this lake because it's actually become a second little place for me to go to have peace. And even if I'm not photographing or making good pictures, again, I strive to get that one picture. I just keep going back time and time again, that repetition will bring more opportunities, guaranteed. And that's why I enjoy it and love it. The peaceful moments as well as the moments in flight. I love birds in flight. One of the monikers of one of my favorite people in the world, John White, is Keep in Flight. But I love when the birds are resting and the water's calm, there's not a lot of wind and some beautiful reflections. It just doesn't get better. I just shot this weekend. I went out to the lake because it's a sad moment. I have a friend that's very sick, and I went out there to do just a little bit of soul searching and thinking, and at the same time shoot some pictures, and had a nice opportunity. Even though the light's flat, you see the nice blue in the eye of the cormorant coming at you. And this was kind of go for the gusto. It was a D5 with a 600 millimeter and a 2X teleconverter for about 1,200 millimeters worth of lens. Again, take the chance, challenge it. The good news is nobody sees the bad stuff that you don't let them see. So if you throw it away, you didn't fail to anybody. But every once in a while, you're going to score that one picture. It's going to be great. That love of birds in Stony Brook took me to Florida, working on all kinds of campaigns, looking for great moments, times when the birds would breed. The chicks would come out, the chicks are born, the connection between the adults and the infants, the parents and the chicks. And I am a big proponent of detail work again, drawing people in so you're seeing the eye of the chick, not necessarily the entire chick or the entire nest. Draw people in with the color and let them lock in. And hopefully these pictures appeal to you. If you look at a picture like this, hopefully there's a little bit of impact for you. If there is, then I've done my job. Osprey, greatest place to photograph osprey is a place called Blue Cypress outside of Orlando. The biggest, largest population of osprey breeding in the world, and it's right here down south. Bronx Zoo. I love the Bronx Zoo. My good friend Julie Mahar, every time we want some therapy, we get in one of the carts and we start driving around the zoo. Whenever it snows, we start talking. That big snow, the 20-inch snowstorm that was about to come, that never came to fruition. It was 2 inches and it was all ice. We're talking to each other the evening before and the morning of. Was there any snow? What do you want to go for? Snowy owls, snow leopards. Find those snow animals and go out and photograph them. But that love of animals brought me to a love of nature. I don't consider myself a great nature photographer, but while you're out there, look for opportunities. And this picture has also reminded me is know your cameras. How many of you truly feel like you know 100% of your camera and how it works? How many of you realize that you may have different kind of controls, like in the Nikon system line, it's called picture control, where you can shoot and control the file format, even in a RAW format, especially if you're using Capture NXD to process the files, where a bridge or something may overwrite the file, keeps the file exactly the way you shoot it. But you can change the colors. Little things that I do is break every rule I possibly can. They want daylight balance because it's a daylight setting or situation. I run fluorescent through here. A lot of times I'll run tungsten in contrasty situation, and it kicks a nice cobalt blue into all the white areas. So play with that kind of stuff. This is a tungsten shot in the middle of the morning to kick that little bit of blue in. It just changes the game. And the more you know about your camera, regardless of what brand you're shooting, the more benefits you're going to have while you're out there shooting. I cannot spend a lot of time in post, and if you do, that's great. Most of the work I do gets translated very quickly, processed very quickly, sent out very quickly. And I know what's going to happen when I retire. I'm going to go back through every drive, and I'm going to find images that I never saw before. It's the story of my life. But you find those ones that kind of appeal to you right away, and you work with them. How many of you believe that this picture is actually shot in black and white? It's 1,000% shot in black and white. How did I do it? In the picture control settings, you have something called monochrome. In the monochrome settings, you have the toning scale that you can run different types of tones. High contrast situation, I run a variance, a selection of different types of tones, from rosé to cyan to sepia to something more towards the yellowish to create a shot like this. If you were to look at the contact proof sheet, old school, if you looked at your browser of images, you would see probably 300 images of variances of colors as I stood there on the tripod that morning trying to work quickly as the light was going to change. Fortunately, it stood there for a little while. So that's how I try to work the technology within the cameras. I love people in portraits. You'll see a lot of that work. John White, the gentleman I mentioned before. I photograph my friends all the time. People ask, how do you get models? How do you get subjects? I ask my friends. You'll see a series of pictures that I've worked on. Rescue Inc., working with an animal rescue group. How do you make thugs connect with animals? And these guys that are really, really tough guys that are going to put you down if you hurt an animal. But you want to also show that they're very connected to their rescues. Joe Pans from Rescue Inc., Big Ant in a junkyard. And when you're working with these people, what do you want to do? You want to ask them what their love is. You want to photograph an environment that they want to be photographed in. So you communicate, you connect, you direct. It goes back to relationships, and I'll talk to you how important that is in the rock work that I do. Moving quicker, Batso, one of my favorite characters of all time. Batso Macaroli out of Connecticut, one of the sweetest, softest people I've ever met. Career criminal, turned Buddhist. Married a woman 30 years younger, changed his life. And he's doing things at 80 years old, still pulling trucks with one of those head things. He started playing the bass, I believe, in his late 70s, bass guitar, and joined a band. I still could drum. I think drumming is still a possibility. But every time I could, I pop by his house on the way up to see my son in Boston and shoot a few pictures, go back time and time again. I'm going to punch through these to try to get to the story tonight, but I love eye contact, another personal project that I've been working on. You guys are so cute back there. Two amazing people, Cliff Mountner. Oh my God. Are you in from Australia? Yep. Marcus Bell. Celebrities, ladies and gentlemen, here at Adorama. This is everybody showing up. Eye contact is my latest personal project. I love when people make contact with my eyes. I love when people connect with us. It's a very human, social thing to do. If I come towards you, do you look away or do you look at me? Will you let me in? Are you sitting there saying, get back off, brother? Or will you let me in? Will you talk to me? Are you going to be my friend? I know I'm getting too close. I know he's getting worried. You're not. Are we live still? Hi,
yeah,
whoever you are.
Live.
How do you connect with people socially? You want to do that with a camera as well. And when the 10514 came out, it's probably when I was inspired most. But this is a friend of mine, Headley Jones. But look at what happens when Headley looks right into the camera with a big smile. You're connected and he's letting you in. We're going to have a good time. But when he looks away, it's not as impactful. Not a bad portrait, but it's not as impactful emotionally. And then when he goes to serious face, even though he's looking at me, I just don't feel the same. And drawing that out of everyone you shoot and anything you shoot, my friend Regina, who worked at a fitness club as a fitness instructor, this person you may recognize through the famous photograph he took. His name is Nick Ut. Anybody know the name Nick Ut? And if you think about a photograph of a naked little Vietnamese girl running down a block after a napalm explosion, this is my friend Nick. And the thing about that story that is so amazing isn't just the photograph, is that he saved her life. And he and I have been friends through this Eddie Adams workshop that we work with, and he's an amazing person and a sweet soul. But at the barn, at a workshop that we were at, I just said, Nick, just come and look into my camera. And I thought it was so dynamic, as he was giving me eye contact with a little bit of smile, that is who Nick is, that I grabbed a colleague of mine, Lindsay Silverman. Remember this face, because he prompted the biggest change in my rock and roll photography. Lindsay's a bit of a character, loves to tell jokes. I kind of feel like he's got that Mel Brooks look. My friend Alfredo from Nikon. I told Alfredo that I stole his puppy. I said, show me that I stole your puppy. He's a very intense guy. He works out. He's crazy workout person. Great exercise person. He's teaching me a lot about nutrition because I need all the help I can get. That's why I'm standing behind the table and not coming out too much because I'm hiding the lower half. But reaction and the eye contact is everything, whether it's a person or it's an animal. So as I set this up and everything I think about when I'm shooting, I take it to performance arts, especially if I'm doing portraits backstage. But to me, the last project I'll talk about right now in understanding personal projects, and I hope you all have something that you've latched onto that you will shoot, photograph time and time again. Through the connection of Nikon and our corporate social responsibility program, I got connected doing portraits at the Ronald McDonald House quite a few years ago. We used to do them in the spring and the fall. So we would have, early time just before the summer, just before the holidays, do portraits. And it was portraits of the sick children, but it was also portraits of the siblings and the families, the parents, grandparents, anybody that was there or is there at the house. And I got so connected to this. And the fun in this is, we go there and we print some pictures, and it's just a great experience connecting with these amazing people going through a tough time. So does a picture like this have impact to you? Does it generate emotion within you? Yet is there energy to the picture? It's a little bit of everything. And so a picture doesn't have to be an action shot to impact us. But it also makes us happy, makes us sad, right? It draws all kinds of emotions here. A sibling who's not sick. We're just occupying his time while his brother or sister are at the hospital being treated. Kaylee from Team Kaylee, one of my favorite people in the world. She's the one that taught me about a disease I was diagnosed with called Chiari. These people have actually taught me about something I was diagnosed with after hitting my head at a train concert, and I'll show you where. But I love doing this, and it's not just about giving back. It's just constantly going back to the same thing over and over, and then something happens. I went out there a few weeks ago to photograph a little girl named Bailey who, after her head was shaved, she thought she wasn't pretty anymore. And I met this kid, Dylan, whose mom said, "We missed one of your portrait sessions. Would you photograph Dylan today?" And Dylan and I have become best friends. And as I close down, before we get into the gist of what this topic is about, this now will be an ongoing project for me for as long as it will happen, and she's asked me to document his life. I plan on photographing his high school graduation, his wedding, as long as I'm around, continue to take pictures of Dylan. But you are now telling a story, and it's probably one of the most connected stories I've ever told through a camera or through imaging. And the way I realized that I needed to do this was no longer to disconnect myself with anyone there. When I first started doing these portraits, what do you think your instinct is? I don't want to know who they are. I don't want to know what the outcome is. I don't want to know whether they survive or not. And I realized along that path, it doesn't work. You're just making average images. So Dylan and I have become the closest of friends. He's 5 years old, stage 4 cancer, 2 stem cell treatments at this point, and they're trying to see if it takes. And his mother's amazing, Teresa. They live right by Citi Field, so we'll connect a lot. We're going to see each other this weekend. He loves superheroes. Now I love superheroes more than he loves superheroes, and we fight for the superheroes that come to the house, and you look for every moment that you possibly can to show him smiling. Because there's the good times and there's not so good times, and that's the kind of story you tell. Are you impacted by these images? Are you feeling these? I don't want you to walk away from here sad. What I want you to walk away understanding is your pictures that you create, the power within those pictures tells stories. Those stories you tell will influence people to do things. Hopefully these pictures will influence people to drop $10 donations, which is what they live off of at the Ronald McDonald House of Long Island. Put the tie on them, a couple of ties, we shoot some portraits of them. This gets more and more fun every time I go out. The work you're seeing here is from 3 times out and no more than about an hour of shooting. You connect with them first. We play toys. We play Legos more than we shoot pictures. And that's how I connect with Dylan. And he's moved into the hospital and moved out of the hospital. We worked a camera in. The hospital let us photograph Dylan. And it's one of the coolest stories I've ever worked on. You know what he's doing here? He cons me into giving him some of the chocolate chips that his mother has in her bag. I tell him, please don't say anything. When she walks in, his expression told the story. I was bagged at that point. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not so fun. So the power of the work that we do will help tell the stories. And that's the impact and the energy and the emotion that I live with every day. So, just a little primer to give you a background on who I am. And it's not about me. This is really about you guys and what you may want to do next. And thinking about this, one of the things I've had the most fun with is rock and roll and the impact and energy and emotion of rock and roll. So, remember that guy Lindsay? I swear to God, this is a true story. I'm standing at Lindsay's desk all the time, and he's showing me all these pictures he makes around Long Island. Sorry, Lindsay, if you're watching this, I love you so much. Maybe not. But I asked him to look at the first concert I ever shot, Motley Crue. And I swear to God, he may not admit this, and I'm going to say it anyway. He was looking out the window when I'm thinking he's looking at my computer screen. And I called him out on it, and he said, well, the pictures bore me. He was very blunt about it. And I said, what bores you? That's so rude. He says, no, it's not you. It's every rock and roll picture bores me. I said, what do you mean? Because Lindsay is into music. It's one of his passions. He said, because all the pictures look the same. He said, everybody's in a pit shooting with a 70 to 200. Everybody's in the pit shooting with a 24-70. Everybody's in the pit with a super wide angle lens. Cliff, you can come in and sit down if you want. I'm just saying. Marcus, you too. Marcus, I love you, Marcus. And he said, so it's not really you, it's the approach you take. And I thought about that right away and immediately thought, how am I going to break every rule I possibly can and stay within the confines of the rules of what rock and roll is about? Now, how many people here have shot a concert? How many have had their shirt tugged by security or somebody in a pit saying, get out of there or drop your camera? It's part of the game. And if it's not just a rock and roll thing, if you are not aware of the fact that you have to have thick skin right out of the gate. Everything changes very quickly. You have no control unless you're connected somehow, some way. So I immediately thought, okay, well, pyro, lighting, what's going to change the game? I'm fascinated by the action of rock and roll. I'm fascinated by moments on stage. If you like the portrait aspect to this, one of the things I challenged myself to do early on was try to make a picture that's so dynamic it looks like I posed that picture on stage. And there's not one picture here that's posed that you're going to see in the next part of the program. All action moments. Scott Whalen, rest in peace. You listen. His tour manager came out to all the photographers and he said, do us a favor. He likes to come to the front of the stage, but don't shove a camera up in his face. It makes him feel really antsy. Now, what do you think most photographers would do? They wait for the opportunity to make him antsy. It was right about then that I stepped back with a 2 to 400 zoom and said, let me shoot from the island, get away from the stage, try something different, went out to 400 millimeters and compressed the shot the way I wanted to, and he looks right into the camera. He's not feeling like I'm invading his space. I prefer not to harass the animals, and I prefer not to harass the performers. And I'll say this right up front, you have one responsibility as a rock photographer to make the performer look stellar. Feel this moment, because we've all had it. Anybody have Facebook accounts or social accounts? Somebody's posted a picture of you that's not flattering. There are times I feel like I'm 600 pounds from some of the pictures that people post of me. That's okay. So at times maybe I was and am. I'm Italian. I like to eat a lot of pasta. But you know how you felt, how your stomach turned? You're like, get that off there, and you can't get rid of it because it's on their page, and then they bait you they tag you in this photo. And now you're out of control. You can remove the tag, but you can't remove the photo. How do you think a performer feels if the picture goes up and it makes them look bad or awkward? So I strive to try to make the best pictures. Relationships have come from shots of super wide angle. It's not just about using the telephoto, but there are times when I'll be in there with a 14 to 24. And I'll only ask this as a favor for anyone else that works within a pit. If you're going to bring a fisheye, don't do this. Don't do this in front of other people. Yes, your shot's important, but so is everybody else. Just a little quick social kind of skill or grace within that. But a 14 millimeter lens, when a gentleman who I had no clue really who he was at the time, I knew he was a performer in the band Train, who I came to learn as Pat Monahan, one of my favorite people on the planet right now. And he kicks up into the lens, and you'll see how this picture, when I posted it socially, impacted another friend of mine who knew him, who sent him the picture that started this snowball. And now come June, I'll be working with Train for the 9th time, and probably at PNC where I cracked my head open with him. Geddy Lee of my favorite band Rush. When we talk about drummers and the drummer, bucket list drummer I wanted, Neil Peart, he said no twice. And then he retired. I may not ever get Neil Peart. I love backlight. I love that stage again. I love the performers. Front light's fine. But as you look at these pictures, you're more inclined to connect with some of them because you love the music. Who here likes Sting? Right? If you don't like Sting or so about it, you're not going to be as impacted by that picture. And one of the things I learned early on was there were eras of rock and roll where it wasn't about the quality of the image, it was about the subject within the frame, and that's what helped drive the success of the image. We're in a different era now, and to me you have to be more compact, more creative, you have to be more efficient, you have to be more consistent, and you have to be different because there are far more photographers out there than ever before in the world of performance arts. Back in the day, some of my legendary friends, Lynn Goldsmith, who lives here in New York and in Colorado, and Robert Knight, I mean, the stories they tell me back then, Robert says it plain and clear, Baron Woolman, if you had a camera and you walked in, they thought you were with the band. Now if you have a camera, you're the first person to get kicked out because everything's got to be controlled. I love lighting on stage. I love gel lighting. Linkin Park, one of my favorite groups to photograph because of their lights. I love the music, but I love their lights. I love the lighting guy. I want to kiss the lighting guy. Taking chances. What do you think I shot this picture with? 24? 50? 35? I shot this with an 80 to 400 zoom at about 350 millimeters. In the pit, crammed up against him, not distance-wise to the lens, but as close as I could get that telephoto to have him fill the frame. Not wide angle, which creates a nice flow from his face through the arm that goes through the back of the picture. Changing the game, changing the rules a little bit. Now, at Jones Beach Theater, we had spoken earlier about Jones Beach. Has anybody been to Jones Beach Theater? Jones Beach Theater, to me, is one of my favorite places to go. If you like getting eaten by mosquitoes, when the mosquitoes are in, you pray for the windy nights because the wind blows the mosquitoes out. But there's two places you can typically shoot at Jones Beach Theater. In the pit, which they created, which they didn't have for years because they shot in the aisles, and after years of talking it out, trying to be reasonable, I said, you got to have a pit. You have to have a place for photographers to stand away from the crowd. Otherwise, we're trying to shoot over people. We're standing in the aisles. It's not a good thing. So over the last 2 years, they created a pit. Many bands push you back to the soundboard. The difference between the pit and the soundboard is about 400 millimeters. And that can change on the fly. So I'm, maybe just because I like to be tight, this is a 600 millimeter shot from the soundboards. But I love the compression. Good news, bad news. When you're in the pit, you got far more angles to work with as the performers move around you. When you're back at the soundboard, if it's Sting or if it's Stevie Nicks, they're not moving much, so you're looking for moments. It's a much tougher shoot to get through. But you look for expressions, you look for high notes, you look for the mouth to be open, you look for that one little moment where your position is your position, and the mouth creeps out from behind the microphone so it's not blocked. And you challenge yourself to do that. Marilyn Manson came to Jones Beach last year. I was terrified. I'm not a big heavy metal guy. Anybody into Marilyn Manson? I mean, the beauty of, yeah, right? The beauty of metal is the stage performance is so powerful. I mean, the sets that they build are the most amazing sets because there's all kinds of dynamics and props and characters and you know, and Marilyn Manson, you know, does not disappoint. What I did understand though is if you get too close, Marilyn Manson may or may not spit on you. What do you do? Marilyn Manson may or may not pull out these really dangerous to your camera powdery things and start throwing them at you or spinning around. What do you do? I kind of hung in there. I kind of took a shot. And wide angle lens as that starts to come around. And I was very impressed by the performance. Again, you don't have to love the music. The performance and the stage is great. And this is where I kind of felt like I was in the danger zone. But I stuck it out. And he gave me the look, and not once did he even think about spitting on me. Now, there is something that I do, and you have to maybe look this up. Do you ever see, it's called a cranial on an aircraft carrier. Back in the day, early days of Nikon, I worked on aircraft carriers training photographers. Any metal show, I bring this cranial. Not only does it have the ear protection, because it protects you from jets on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, but it's also got the helmet. A lot of times there's this thing called body surfing, where they surf the crowd and they're thrown from the back of the audience and they come up and it's expected that they're going to land in the pit and there's 50 security guards waiting to catch them and everybody's wearing gloves. And if you're a photographer and you're not facing that, you're looking at the stage, you're going to get kicked in the head at one point or another. So I wear this cranial, and maybe he just thought I was a nut wearing this cranial. I don't know. But he didn't spit, and I enjoyed it. But this is what I'm talking about, that body surfing. People carry you across. Anybody body surf here? Yes? No? In the back of the room? No? My niece. I'm at a concert, and I knew she was there. Next thing I know, she goes flying past my camera. She loves to do that kind of stuff. Thank God my daughter did not. Not that it's a bad thing. But look at the details. Remember I talked about details and drawing in? What does this picture tell you about the crowd that's showing up here? Younger audience, younger demographic. Look at the nail polish. You know, the bracelets. You see the orchestra band, so they're allowed in this pit. The Converse shoes of the performer. I love that kind of detail as you move forward. There were times I experimented with art techniques in post-production, and as much as I love these pictures and I love the moments, I'm not a big fan of techniques, but sometimes they work. This is a band I've become very close to. We'll talk about Shinedown. This is an ode to Lynn Goldsmith, who I mentioned before. First person I've ever saw shoot a beautiful color picture in a mosh pit and just let the camera exposure run at a long exposure to create all this kind of blur. So this is my ode to Lynn Goldsmith. She's such a great influence and has a great conviction about making money in this business and not giving things away. So she's been a really solid mentor. That guy Lindsay I was telling you about gave me his D810 to shoot with. Foreigner comes in, the lead singer grabs my camera. I shot a picture of it. I sent it to Lindsay. He said, "You'll never see your camera again." It was a prototype. That makes a Nikon employee freak out. Sorry, Lindsay, if you're there. We got the camera back. He shot some pictures. But what do you do when someone grabs your camera? You pick up your other camera, you start shooting. And he had the D810. That was the day we announced the D810. Howard Stern had a special birthday tribute to Billy Joel a couple of years back. I was able to shoot that with a couple of Getty people and my good friend Doug. And access to Billy Joel, unlike what you would get at Madison Square Garden, and let you very connected. And to have a picture of him, not a little head coming out of a piano from stage right, because that's where most of the photographers are shoved during the Madison Square Garden shows. I have a picture like that of Billy, since I was a Hicksville boy growing up, was pretty cool. But again, always looking for the moments in stage performance. What's going to make a rock picture different is waiting for Ed Sheeran back at South by Southwest. Anybody know what South by Southwest is? It's a beautiful music convention. It's been going on for years, and long before Ed Sheeran was Ed Sheeran, he played at South by Southwest, and I had the opportunity to photograph him. The beauty of Ed is he's so committed to this music, and the way he plays and performs is so dynamic. He started breaking one string after the next, and that became the picture as the strings just kept falling down until the last string went, and he dropped the guitar and started singing a cappella. It was brilliant. Some of the stuff that happens on stage, whatever they're smoking up there in some of the hip-hop concerts, to me, it's not about what he's smoking. It's about, again, a little bit of light coming from behind to light up that smoke coming from the blunt or the cigar or whatever cigarette that he's smoking that makes a picture like that. Some have said that this may be one of my best rock pictures ever. It's a band called Shinedown. I don't see that. Do you? I don't. Some say yes, some say no. Subjective, right? I love the fact that everybody's in motion. I hate the fact that three of them, you can't see their faces. So even, though people say this may be a great picture and a great moment, it's not one of my favorite. But I use it anyway because of the way other people react to it. I would love to have that one shot where you see all their faces. But to have the drummer up, you see the drummer's face, not so bad, right? Because I love drummers. Lighting, lighting, lighting. Do I have to say anything more about lighting? When a stage is lit correctly, the toughest thing you have to do is create the exposure. And with digital cameras, as tough as it is, because you are limited with the amount of time you can shoot, 2 to 3 songs typically, you have to make it work. And the one thing I would tell you is, and it's not an easy thing to do, you have to start to slow down your brain. Don't go out there and bang out 600 pictures in 3 songs. Go out there and selectively watch the light as it moves, and watch the light as it hits the face. And listen, I guess I would say just shoot, shoot, shoot away and just look for the great moments when you get back. But as you start to fine-tune yourself and you don't want to waste a lot of images or have to edit a lot, because most of what I do is put a quick gallery together on site and send 3 or 4 images during the show right after the 3rd song to Live Nation so they can post them on their social pages. I don't have a lot of time to edit, so I look for those lit moments and I don't want to overshoot. I do overshoot the drummers, but you look for the light, you look for those dynamic, no different than a sunset. You look for that. And then you try to find the access that's going to allow you to make pictures that you could not make anywhere else, that draw people into a place they could never see. So when I first started photographing rock and roll, and Jeffrey, I know you're out there, one of my good friends, Jeff, said to me, you should title this program, All the Pictures You'll Never Make Because You Never Get Access. And the challenge really is, I started off just like everybody else without access. It's about the relationships. It's about how you ask. At times I feel like an actor going on auditions. You're told no more than you're told yes. But you got to be polite about it. You back off. What happens when someone gets in your face and you say no and they come back with, oh, come on. All right, you'll tolerate it once. Oh, come on. Well, what if we do? Can I just? And 5 minutes they come back and they ask the same 3 questions. You start to do what? You put a barrier up. You don't want to talk to them. Then they walk in the room. You see them coming and you walk out. You don't even want to engage at that point. But if you ask and you're told no, try to figure out another way to ask the question. Try to figure out another way in, or wait for an opportunity. Try to convince them that there's a value for you being there. And I hear it all the time. We had this quick discussion early on, right? When you know a band and you start off at a smaller club, your access, your ability to shoot flash where you can in the big game, you have so much more access to do more things and be more creative and get the moments that matter. Stage performance, everybody shoots stage. The key to rock and roll, the thing that I think interests more people is what are they doing backstage? Because you don't see that. What are they allowing you in to do backstage? This is great. This is about the hierarchy of rock and roll. This is Nickel Band's washer and dryer. There are 4 bands playing on this card tonight. The first 3 bands are not allowed to use this washer and dryer. They get the green room, they get the booze, they get the food, they get the best food, they get the sushi, they get whatever it is that comes to being in the green room. Where do you think the opening act is? They're in a hallway in that same arena. They're washing their clothes or having them sent out. They have their crates that they move in, and they open them up like an armoire because that's what they're traveling and living out of. And most of them do anyway. But as you make it to the big time, you get your own washer dryer. That's a great story to tell. Nobody gets to see that. So this is a picture that evolved called through something that I've done, very typical to sports photography, using a remote camera. How many people have used remote cameras before, understand what a remote camera is? A remote camera is something that you will mount via a clamp somewhere, like the starting gate of a horse race, where you're not allowed to be when that race takes off, and you trip it with a transmitter wirelessly. You fire it off at the start of that race, so you get the horses running out, and you may only get 15 pictures to choose from, but you're putting that camera in a place that nobody could stand, which makes that sports picture more dynamic. And I started thinking about that because when you're photographing bands, especially publicity photos, where do you think the drummer is most times? It's in the back of the photo, right? Or at the tail end of the photo, right? On the stage, where's the drummer most times? The back of the stage. And I started to get really frustrated that I couldn't shoot a good picture of a drummer. And we'll talk about that as we go. Connecting, access, relationships. That's what I mentioned before. How do you talk to people? How do you become their friends? How do you bring something to the table that they may want to connect with you about? You know, when you look at this and we get caught up in celebrity, the way you connect with people who have done more or accomplished more, things that we think are fascinating, is to just bring to the table something that helps them. Talk to them about things they don't know. You know what my link is to most of the drummers that I work with? They all love photography. That's how I got started with connecting with one loved photography, then the next one loved photography. And that relationship then all of a sudden says, hey, can you come out to PNC at Homedale? Can you show me how to use my camera? And that's what happened to two of the members of this band called Shinedown. And with Nickelback, the first drummer I ever worked with, Daniel Adair, owned a Nikon D300. And when he walked out, one of the ways I connect with people immediately is to just try to connect with something on them. You ever see one of those straps that's put on a camera and it's got like, the strap is hanging out of the little applets there, the little plastic pieces, and it looks like a rabbit, and it's just not done well? There's a clean way of putting a camera strap on and not, and I picked apart the way he put his strap on. And no offense to anybody, because I see some people that do this and shoot like this. But when he came out, he thought he was going to be really cool and shoot my picture, and he did this. And I turned away from his camera. I said, until you learn how to hold a camera properly, don't shoot my picture. And it was really meant as sarcasm, as a joke, but we connected immediately. He kind of got that. And that's what started our friendship, and everything started snowballing from there. Zach Myers of a band called Shinedown. You know what this mask is? His name is Zachary Michael Myers. It's one of the masks from that, was it Halloween? Yeah. And there are like 13 or 16 of them ever made, and he bought one of them. Your access. You're given access. You start shooting pictures. Now you start to feel good about yourself, right? You're backstage. Someone kisses somebody. What do? This was really, truly a defining moment with the relationship of a band, the band Shinedown. This is Brent Smith, the lead singer. And what do we typically want to do? We take that picture, it's a good picture, you like it enough, you want to post it somewhere. I didn't. I actually called the drummer. I wrote to the drummer and said, Barry, who is this in the picture? Now the good news is, it's his wife, who travels with the band. She runs the merch, or she did back at that time, and I made him a nice picture. And I was happy about that. The circumstances, this is where I start to work the really fast glass, 24 millimeter f1.4 with nothing but the security light over the doorway. You'll see a lot of these pictures in black and white because a lot of times the color falls apart. It's just not good color. And the dynamic of black and white seems to work a little bit better. But once you get that access, you have to become the fly on the wall. You are not the performer. I say this a lot, and I really truly mean this. Nobody pays to see me on stage. Nobody pays to come to see you photographing. They pay to see these performers, and they put a lot of money down for tickets these days. What, $100, $200, $250? Go to an Aerosmith show, you get the whole meet and greet package for $2,000. You get to sit in the front row, you get to meet Steven Tyler. Put a lot of money in there. The last thing you want to do is be a part of the photo. That is not what you're there for. It's not your job. But when you do come in, you try to tuck behind things. You do see me here. That other picture, I purposely put myself in the mirror because I do have a little vanity. I want to show my friends I'm in some cool places every once in a while. But not many performers will allow you in the dressing room. It really depends on the demeanor of the band and what they're allowing you to do. Some bands ain't going to happen. Some bands that just come in with us and just tell the story. And that's when it becomes a really, really cool thing. A lot of times you're not allowed to shoot in sound check. Why? They're not wearing the outfits they'd wear on stage, or they're dressed down, or they may not be the same. Maybe they care about their appearance. Or it's just a private moment that they're trying to work things out for that show that they're about to perform. When you're allowed in, the access is everything. But what I want to show people here, and this is why behind the scenes is so much, what is Barry Kurtz doing just before he goes on stage? What is Zach Myers doing? What do the fans think that he's doing backstage? Notice the bag on the table. Always bring gifts. They love photography. Eric and Barry of Shinedown love taking pictures. I brought them Nikon gifts. Little tchotchkes, stuffed animals, little things like that, little mouse pads, whatever we have to give away. But connect with them in the places that they love. This is Eric Bass. Many years ago. God, this is from a while ago. This is actually at, remember the Westbury Music Fair? I forget what it's called now. North Fork Bank Theater. It's changed names so many times. But they love photography so much, they thought it'd be really cool to come to the Nikon building. And I said, but it's really more of an administration building, and there's repairs downstairs, and it's 3 levels of administration. That's the coolest thing we've ever seen. Let us go. We want to come. Call it the Big Blue Box over in Melville. It's a mirrored building, blue mirrored building. And now I'm thinking, as I'm driving them over from the venue to Nikon, if I crash, not fatally, hopefully, or I can't get back there, there's no concert. So, you think about these things as you go. But as I got connected through the rock and roll, it led me to drummers. And this is where the passion's really been. And again, any questions up to this point? Anything? Yes, sir.
I shoot local bands, right? I'm limiting myself to 2 or 3 songs. Is it good to shoot during the whole concert?
Yeah. The question is, you're given a set of guidelines, right? You're allowed to come in, and you're offered 3 songs to shoot. There's a reason why they're doing that. I haven't really figured it all out. It really is about the control of the images, I think, more than anything. Or they want you to shoot certain parts of the show, because the shows are, for the most part, choreographed, although some are not. I can tell you bands I've shot consecutive nights, it was the exact same show. They said the exact same thing around the exact same time. There are people that would argue with what I'm saying is, I believe that you continue on with better relationships when you follow the rules and you do what they tell you to do. Because when they see that, they realize that you're willing to work with them. I know a lot of photographers that would go out into the crowd and continue to shoot. If that was part of the guidelines saying it was okay, great. But more times than not, it's not. So it really depends on the band. It depends on the venue. Some bands let you shoot 6 songs. When I photographed Van Halen coming through, they had a 6-song limit that you could shoot. Others are 3. Most are 3. I think it really, if they're pretty upfront about, no, you shouldn't be shooting pictures after 3, then it's not the right thing to do. If they feel like, well, go out in the audience now, do whatever you want, as long as you're not in front of the patrons or you're not in the pit and do what you want, then it's okay. But I think it depends on the band. Do I think it's rude? No, I don't. I wouldn't say rude is the word, but what you don't want is to ever be caught. I hate to make this gender. You don't want to be that guy, because the people, security at the venue, see that guy. They watch out for that guy. They see the people that are breaking the rules, and they're going to wait for that. And as soon as your camera comes up after that 3rd song, they will come over and they'll escort you out. At Jones Beach, they take you out of the arena. You can't walk through there. It was 8, 9 years of relationships that allows me to walk around with cameras, because they know one thing: I'm not going to shoot from anywhere else. There's only one other shot I make after the 3rd song, which we're granted access to do, is an overhead shot that we can shoot the crowd to show people how many people, to show the people that look at the venue and the sponsors that may want to sponsor the venue, how many people are in that audience, that they're filling the seats. That's what anybody that sponsors a venue wants to see, is every seat filled. Why? Because your name's out there. The concessions go up. Everything changes. It's a business just like anything else. Yes, ma'am.
Where's your proudest picture displayed? Like, are they Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Are they?
That's a good question. Where is my proudest picture displayed? On my Facebook wall?
Okay.
I would say my proudest picture is the picture of Pat Monahan kicking up to the camera. I have a lot of photographs that I love, but I sent it to him for Christmas, along to his friend Howard, and if that's hanging on his wall and it's at in his house, or even if it's laying on a desk and it's on display, again, he wanted a Converse deal after that shot, but you'll see that. Neil Peart, the drummer I never got. I'm not saying if you're photographing drummers you can't make a good drum shot from the pit, especially if the stage is low, you got a better view. The kit is a little bit lower. Some of the kits are up high, some are low. Some kits have framework, some kits don't. Some kits are very cluttered, some aren't. And maybe it's a nice picture, it's a nice face. Does that look like a drummer to you? Looks like a drummer to me. Is it a great drummer picture? No. Is it a fun picture of my friend Daniel? Sure. But I don't call this a dynamic drum shot, and that's just a personal thing, you know, for me. I want to see the action. And I'll tell you, when I show you pictures of them, I had asked the drummer, a really powerful drummer, I said, what makes a great picture to you? What do you want to see if I'm photographing you? He said, 2 hands and 2 sticks. That's a powerful photograph to me. And you'll see that in just a little bit. Now, if a drummer stands up, like Barry has here, you're shooting with a telephoto lens, you shoot up over the kit, he's got the drumsticks out, two hands, 2 sticks. Is that a dynamic drum picture? Maybe Barry likes it. Maybe it'll be his profile picture someday, but maybe not necessarily. Tommy Lee from a distance with a 500mm lens. Not a bad deal when the kit's low. And then you can see the drummer, and the lighting was phenomenal. And this was part of a project called the Tommy Lee Project. That was part of a remote project. But shooting from the front of house, up in the pit, you'll score a good picture every once in a while, but it's a very low percentages that I think you're going to get a picture, because 9 times out of 10 it looks like this. This is Ryan Birdie from a band called Soldier, great reggae band. They were up for a big Grammy Album of the Year a couple of years ago. What do you notice in this picture, though? So one day I started thinking about this when Nickelback was touring through Jones Beach Theater, and they said, you guys are sponsors of this tour, what do you want to do? And I'll show you the questions that I asked, but I said, one of the questions was, can I get a camera close to the drum kit? I thought, well, if I could put a camera on a gate with horses running out of them, how am I going to make that sort of hero-like shot? You ever see a picture of a pilot in a fighter jet? That exploded wide-angle shot, they call it a hero shot. I want a hero shot of a drummer. I don't want the pipes. I don't want the cymbal stands. I don't want all the accessories of a drum kit. And so it started with Daniel when he came through, and it really started with a few simple questions. If you were asked, what do you want to do at a show, what's the first thing you would ask? Somebody tell me. I want to shoot the whole show. I don't want any limits. Please don't pull me out. Don't grab my hair. Don't grab my shirt. Don't kick me. Don't give me the hook. Just give me the freedom of shooting the entire show. And they said, sure, why not? And then all right, well, I'm kind of on a roll. How about, can I have stage access? All right, let me ask. You asked, so I'm going to ask. No, you can't have stage access. Stage, great way, shoot wide angle, shoot back at the crowd. I've seen some phenomenal shots. Really great rock people. Can I shoot around the dressing rooms? Go a little bit deeper backstage? No, you can't do that either. Chad Kroger, really, the lead singer, doesn't want that. You can't do that. But can I put a remote camera on the drum kit? That was the 4th question I figured, and this is, you're going to, again, there's a mental thing going on here. I can't ask 3 questions. I think my daughter suffers from the same issue. It's an even thing. I can't ask 3, it's got to be 4. Not an odd, it's got to be an even. So let me ask a 4th question. I'm telling you, this is the way, and he's, well, let's ask the drummer. And because Daniel was shooting the D300, he thought it was really cool. But more important, most of those front performers get all the attention. He says, no, somebody wants to put a camera there? That sounds great. That sounds really cool. So you start working that out. And it all starts, and you make mistakes, and it starts off by thinking, well, how am I going to get a mount on there? I get a little magic arm with a super clamp, try to figure out where I can place a camera. And this is Tom Wilhelm. What I found out early was the best friend you could ever have is the drum tech. The drum tech works for the drummer, sets up the kit. When this kit's set up, the drum tech brings you in. The drum tech tells you where the hot spots are to mount, where you can't mount, where you may not want to try to mount, or where you may try to mount. And we've become the best of friends, most of them. And Tom and I came out, and first thing I said to him is he going to come out? Will he come out and play for us so I can know where to position? One camera. That's all it starts with. And it comes out, and it was actually one of the biggest failures I've ever had, but it was a great learning experience. So we decided, let's put a camera over the snare drum. So you can see that camera right there. And that position right over the snare. And of course, their gut is to say, please don't get so close, we don't want to break the camera. I said, I promise you, you'll shatter a stick before the camera breaks. So let me get as close as I can. But if he does come out and play, well, he said he wants to meet you anyway because he wants to learn about his camera. Oh, he's got a camera, D300. Great, let's connect. And he comes out, and we talk about mounting in different places. And he comes out and he sits down. And I said, but you got to show me where you're going to hit this snare. I don't even know what I'm asking here at this point, but show me where you hit the snare and how close you're going to come with that stick. Now, I immediately thought that the best lens I could ever use for this is a 16 millimeter. So 16 millimeter graduated into a 14 millimeter 2.8, 14 to 24 at times, sometimes even a 20. But you're so close, you need the super wide angle. So 16 fisheye, the 16 fisheye is the Nikkor is the most popular lens that I use. And you start to realize you better have a game plan. And you better realize, I originally started doing this with Pocket Wizards. Now I'm using Nikon's remote system, which has a much smaller footprint. But you have to remember to turn things on. You have to remember to turn things off, conserve batteries. I don't know, the battery's going to die. There's 3 acts before this act. And all these questions start to roll through your head. So you start taking notes as you learn, as you go. And by the second time working with Nickelback, I had all these notes down because I screwed up royally the first time. I'll give it to you. I dropped the transmitter. I tried to do too much. Give me the whole show, right? So I'm shooting the front, I'm shooting the back, I'm shooting a million pictures. I dropped the transmitter. I couldn't fire that remote camera, which created a great story, by the way. But what happens is you come out early. The kit gets set up at noon. You got to be out there. Now I've gotten so elaborate, I have no choice but to be out there about noon or 1 o'clock. And you set the camera up, and just before they go on, you jump out there, you turn the camera on, you shoot a test picture. This is your hero, your vanity picture, just to see that everything's working. Then you walk off stage. And I start shooting some very subpar pictures of Daniel. And it's a nice picture, right? Is it a great picture? No. I was very disappointed to shoot because I know what I missed. I missed his solo. I was working through. I had the transmitter. I didn't put it on a camera. I didn't put it on a lanyard. I put it in my pocket. It fell out of my shorts pocket. Failure. So I go up to him because he changed the game. Remember I said I couldn't get stage access? He said, yeah, there's a reason why. Because the pyro goes off. Nobody wants you to get hurt. You come up when I tell you to come up, and that's what we did. He threw something called a T-shirt toss. And I start shooting with my 14 millimeter, 14 to 24. And I have to tell him at that point, dude, I dropped the remote. I'm going to miss your solo. Now, he's playing now. He's through the tour. He's feeling good. So he goes, don't worry about it. I'll fire the camera for you. So this is what he started doing during the show. And I'm looking at the take as it's coming back, and I'm thinking, this guy, Dan, he's so into this. He's really into shooting pictures. He's really into the moment. I really need to work with him more. He started sending me messages through the camera. I mean, I'm looking at all these things. I'm going, where did this come from? And realizing that he wanted to be engaged. Now, what do you do when you miss moments? I screw up all the time, right? You feel that gut. You get past that gut check. It hurts. I screwed up royally with Gavin DeGrow's group just over a little while ago, over the winter, with my daughter there, so that's embarrassing too. But you move on, right? I knew they were playing Hartford a week later. I said to him right away, dude, I screwed this up. Can I come to Hartford? Sure you can. You were a good guy. You didn't cross the line. You didn't break the rules. You didn't shoot where you weren't supposed to. And he says, come back. And then when we got there, this is in Hartford, I said, if you were to put a second camera, where would you put it? And he said, well, over the right side, stage right, where I slammed this China symbol. I went right to my computer. What's a China symbol? I have no idea, but it's a waffle kind of symbol. And he does all show long. He bangs through this thing. And I'm firing off pictures like it's going out of style. And now I'm realizing, focus on the drummer, don't worry about everything else. And so this is from the China symbol. He planted that remote, not me. He told me where to put it. And we just kept shooting pictures. He played to the camera. And the best thing that can ever happen to you is when you get a magazine sent to you in the mail with a little note that says, thank you. Here's a picture, here's a paycheck. And he said, I love this picture. Why do you think he loved this picture? He says, because my bicep looks really big in this picture. Wide angle, it looks really good, right? It's about the connection. It's about the relationship. Take a step back. You know that transmitter I lost? Here's the best thing you could ever do if you work at a venue or go into a venue. Become best friends with security. Security found this thing. They knew it was mine. They knew it had to be mine. I'm the only lunatic that would carry something like this. And I got my $400 Wizard back. Because I shake hands with everybody. I know people have the phobia, don't touch my hand. Did you sneeze in your hand? Are you infected with something? Are you sick? Do you have a cold, cough? Fist pump them, elbow pump them, whatever it takes. Just do something with them, connect with them. You know what they're doing? They're doing a job, just like I'm doing. Nobody's better, nobody's worse. I just take pictures. They control crowds and they throw drunks out and they try to contain the fights. Best picture I could have ever taken of a drum remote, of a drummer, and it was the second time out. Now I have a stigma. This is from that China symbol. He rears back. You know what the biggest comment I got on this? Man, the sweat coming off his brow is amazing. It's not sweat, it's pyro. What do you learn when you're on stage? If you ever see a fire light spinning, a siren light spinning, duck, because pyro is about to go off 10 seconds later. There are all kinds of indicators, so you know. Little tips along the way. One of my favorite pictures ever. How many people here, if you were asked the question, what's your favorite picture? What's the best picture you've ever taken? What would you say? Do you have one? I see your heads going, yeah? How many have ever said, I haven't taken it yet? Yeah, I know. You know what my answer to that is? I can't say it because we're live still, right? Yeah. No, it starts with a B, middle of the word is S. To me, and it's just a personal thing, I have favorite pictures. My favorite sports picture is Curtis Martin running in the snow. My favorite drum picture is Daniel Adair. Why do I have favorite pictures? Because I need to top them. This now becomes the addiction. This is the sickness. I have to do it differently. I have to try something new. This picture went a long way. Went to Nikon Mexico as part of an ad campaign.
Now, do you see that picture when you take it?
No.
Or are you just clicking it?
You're clicking.
Couldn't
You're
you
just
do it on
clicking.
an iPad?
You can't.
See what
The
you're doing?
timing is way off. Wi-Fi in an arena, the question is, did you see this as you were taking it? No. The technology may get there at some point, but Wi-Fi, transmission, sometimes there's going to be interference, but that little delay with a drum and a stroke, you're just winging it at that point. And so I'd be lying if I said, I'm calculating that shot as it goes back. When I started to see the pictures, this is the excitement. I'm almost falling asleep, and I see, more, 100 pictures, and the next one comes up, and I start to see something happening. Because I've run through 100 pictures in 2 seconds, and then, oh my God, wait, he's going back. He's running back. Well, it goes ahead. Wait a minute, the stick's going back with it. And you just, if you're shooting 10 frames a second, back then it was the D3, so it was 9 frames per second. And all of a sudden, the beauty of that burst of 10, 12 frames is that moment's about to happen. You know what the worst moment is for you when you're editing? Is when you don't shoot the 10th picture. You stop. You don't know. You just don't feel it. You push, and then you stop.
How many shots would you shoot at a show like that? Remotely?
I'm going to reveal that.
Yeah, I mean,
But there's a reason for it. So will you promise you're not going to judge me? Biggest remote setup I've done is 9 cameras. What do you think it would be?
128 gigs of card per camera.
If I said tens of thousands of images at a show? I have the number. It's actually going to be in a picture as we come up. The beauty of relationships, Daniel and I are great friends. What's the first thing you'll do with somebody that you become connected with? Write to them. But don't write to them about the next show. Ask them how their family is. Talk to them about things that mean everything to them, that mean everything to you. Hey, I hear you guys are coming back to Jones Beach. This was 2 years ago. Damn it, we're not coming back. The tour is canceled. Chad has a nodule on his throat or something with his throat. The tour is over. We'll come back. They're coming back this year. The reunion of the first drum remote I ever had happen at Jones Beach is going to happen this year again on July 1st if everything goes well this time. You know how many cameras I'm going to do? Daniel, if you're watching, 10. Why am I going to do 10? Because it's one more than the most I've ever done. I'll find places to put these cameras. I'm going to beg, borrow, steal, whatever I have to do to find cameras, rent. But don't write and say, well, this really S-U-C-Ks. Was that good? I can do that? I can spell that? Chewy, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you being here for me. Write to them and say, well, how do you feel? You don't complain that the tour is off. You let him say, I'm going to enjoy my family for the summer now. What would you want? I'd want my summer off. He gets to play with his kids, and that's a great thing. So it continues on and it grows, and the project just gets bigger. I just want you to see how I mount the cameras. A little video. You see the magic arms. You see the super clamps. I'm clamped to little ball heads. And I try something different every time. I got to this concert with Soji after doing this a couple of times. What if I did a front-facing camera? Not photograph the drummer, just use the opportunity. I don't know why I finished on a water bottle with that video, but you see how I'm clamped, and I'm trying to maneuver with the magic arms into different places, and I try to attach the cameras and secure them and lock them down. With Shinedown, one of the greatest techs I've ever worked with, Mark Bennett, one of the guys that comes in there, he's excited I'm there. From minute one, he's telling me different things that we can try that we didn't try before after working together 4, 5, 6 times. And this is the setup. That's the magic arm right here. This is clamped to a mic stand. I mean, I'm always fearful of the weight of the camera. You try to do the balance thing, and but I'm not. Is there wood somewhere? I've not failed once with a camera. I have not had a camera drop, but there was a time when I came and the magic arm was loose. Maybe a couple more minutes, the vibrations would have knocked that thing. You don't want a camera dropping into the kit. Doesn't really play well on the resume. But I hook it up, I line it up, 14 millimeter 2.8, try to get as close as I can, all before sound check. That is the requirement now. So this is the setup that I use. This is the real-time setup that I use. It's a WR1 and a WRR10 connected to the front of the camera. I'm shooting the front of the show. Every time I shoot a picture, the drum cameras go off. Whether I have 1 camera, 2 cameras, 5 cameras, or 10 cameras. I've never done 10, so that would be a lie. 8 cameras. What am I doing now? I'm working far more efficiently. I'm listening to the beats, I'm listening to the moments. If there's a high note going up and I hear the drums go, I'm shooting the front person and I'm getting all the pictures coming from the drum remote. That's the beauty of this. It takes a little bit to set up, so now I bring my daughter because I become super dad when it's her favorite band, or I bring help if I can, because there's a lot of hardware to drag in and a lot of hardware that you have to get off within minutes at the end of the show. How quickly do you think I have to tear down when I have 4, 5, 6 cameras? Yeah, I do it in 2 minutes. You have no choice. They are on a schedule, and you have to respect the stage. Tour managers, I've worked with great tour managers, I've worked with really nasty tour managers. The tour managers that will say, how long is that going to take you to set up? 20 minutes? Well, good, you got 10. You know, you have to work in that kind of gritty, gutty environment. But at the end, they got to get off the stage. There are curfews, there are fees that they pay, there are penalties they pay, and if they don't get that equipment out of there by a certain time, they pay money, and that's why you have to respect that. Barry Kurtz, I go through song lists now, I go through song sets. You talk about everything you have to do, I study the music. I know it sounds nuts, but I'll try to go to setlist.com to see when a band's on tour and try to get that set list that most likely will play. You get the rhythm of the beat in there, and I'm going to know exactly when I need to be pounding it. But I'll also sit down with the drummer. Barry and I sit down every time. Here's the song Crow, you know, The Crow and the Butterfly. It's a very sedate song. Do you think I'm pounding a lot of images out of those cameras? No, not even close. If the light's off, I'm not going to do that. But they have fire coming up during enemies. You know I'm going to be hitting it hard then. Pyro coming up at the beginning. Listen for those points. Dim lights during this song. You think I'm going to waste a lot of frames? Camera settings, very simple. Center weighted metering, -2/3. ISO as high as I can jack it up. I want to freeze action. The beauty of the D5 now, 12,800 is my average for the drum remotes. 10,000 is the average. Why? Because when the lights change very quickly, I can still make a great picture at a 40th of a second, but it could average very quickly to 40 to 125th of a second. How much action is that going to stop? How much blur is it going to create? That's when it becomes this game of potluck. And sometimes it works out and works in your favor. But notice 2 cameras with Daniel. Now I start to go up to 4 cameras and start to place them. And as the drummer gets more involved, hey, he needs another mic stand. Can you bring a mic stand out? Can you bring out 2 sandbags? We need to sandbag these. That's why I start holding down the mic stands. We bring out extra sandbags. I start using zip ties now. I zip tie the camera back to the stand or whatever I'm connected to, so it takes a little pressure of the hang off. And if something starts to creep in the way of the knob and it starts to fall off, I pull it right back. And I make sure that it's not going to fall into the drum kit. You'll see why that's important later on. So more cameras, more placement. I'm just trying to have fun, getting cameras into places that I can't physically stand. Why? Is what I said before. I see this happening, and no offense to these people. If they're working on tour, they're working on tour. When they're standing right over the drum kit and they're doing this, how do you feel about me standing on the stage that you paid to see? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't feel like that's a smart thing to do. From the front, from behind. I just started experimenting with different places. Barry's dreads fly. I love drummers with dreads. I love the way that changes. I love when they tweet the pictures. I try to fire off a few pictures immediately. As tough as it is, the thousands of images, tens of thousands, average camera can shoot with 2 card slots, 128 gig cards, close to 9,000 images. I try to back off now, but I shoot everything raw now. The more capacity we have, I'll shoot raw. Why? I can miss an exposure. More times than not, aperture priority, center weighted metering, 2/3 down, is a formula that seems to work. Why not manual? Too many changing lights. I'm going to lose more pictures than I'll keep. I'd rather the technology within the camera, the brains of this thing, do all the working. Moving on. A picture that I love because I've had friends tell me, well, how'd you pose that picture? How'd you set the lights? I didn't do anything. This is during a show. From above. He's playing the next night, and I'm texting him pictures that I shot the night before. And he's responding, you know, before he goes out on stage. Wow, those cameras rule. What have I done now? I mean, I got myself excited. I got the drummers excited. You know how I met Barry? I was setting up for Nickelback the third time they were playing Atlantic City, and I was stuffing a D300 inside the kit just to play. And he said, "Are you going to shoot movies with that camera?" It was a D300S. I said, "How did you know this camera shoots movies?" He said, "Because I own it." Daniel owns a camera. Barry owns a camera. You're starting to see that little connection starting to happen. Again, I love the dreads. Now, again, I talk to him about these pictures. I let them look. I let them come back for feedback. Is it goofy? Does it make them look weird? Does it make them look good? Does it make them look strong? Does a lead singer come up and play into this? So many times the lead singer will come up. The fascination of this is, again, it's pot luck. If a light explodes and colors kick, and it's all the things that we're told early on in photography not to do, and it makes a good picture, how amazing is that? Do you like this picture? I see a lot of heads going, it's different. Do you think I ever planned that? Or if I planned that, I expected the circles of light and confusion and the flare in the diaphragm and that explosion of light, the little ghost that you see here. And then you get to see Barry's face. That's the equalizer. That's the thing that makes it to me, is that you see the face. But then I look for just a beautiful moment where you're not playing so heavy or so hard. You got heavy hitters and you got softer hitters. Drew Scholes are trained. I tried to invite him tonight. He wasn't available. He lives here in New York City. One of the most chill drummers I've ever seen. One of the best drummers I've ever seen, Steve Smith. I work with, it's like butter. He moves his hands and all of a sudden the sound comes out. And he does it the old school way of holding sticks. It's phenomenal. But I try to shoot the best portraits I can. This was actually shot with a 2-500 from the pit while I had remotes going during that same concert. 6 remotes during that show. You know what my mistake was there? You want to be a dummy? Take all that time to set up a camera, fill it up with 2 card slots, and never turn the camera on. I've done that before. Do you know that? No, until I tell you that. That's a heartbreaker. Another mistake, you set things up, you don't tape down the lens. I do a lot of taping, manual focus, right? No autofocus. I set myself, get enough depth of field. Do you ever think that anybody in their lifetime could ever misfocus a fisheye lens at f8? Because I would set around 5.6 or f8. I've done it. Me, I've done it. I've failed that way. One of the this was in Brooklyn at the new amphitheater, the Ford Amphitheater that Live Nation has there. So front of the kit, nice dynamic shot, 2 hands, 2 sticks. I love this picture, but it's not as dynamic as those close wides. This is the same concert from a different angle. Motley Crue, Tommy Lee Project, Live Nation comes. I start to wind this down. He runs on a roller coaster kit during this tour. He plays upside down. When you're a photographer and somebody comes to you and says, "Do you think you could do that drum thing with Tommy Lee? You think you can make a picture?" What's your answer? Under every circumstance is absolutely. I make that picture, no problem. You know what the first thing I thought when I got off the phone?
What I say that for?
Huh?
What I say that for, right?
No, I thought to myself, how am I going to show that he's upside down? If the camera's running with the kit and it's spinning up there with him, how am I going to show he's upside down? Right? He's got long hair. Maybe that's an indicator. I don't know. Maybe you'll see something on the ground. I had no clue. Now, they were actually playing before Kiss. We were basically told, if you don't get those cameras off the kit within a minute, we will throw them off. They're not trying to be mean. Again, they got to clear the set so Kiss's band can get their stuff up. That's the world. Placed 3 remotes. This is a remote going up, and I placed 2 on both sides of the kit. My buddy Steve came out with me. Steve is a cinematographer. He's a film guy. He's a video guy. Now you'll understand why we have so many images. I'll explain. Hero shot, Tommy Lee, right from the cockpit. One of my favorites. You know, he played most of the concert this way. He only goes up and rotates during one song. He goes around once on his own, and then he goes around with someone who wins a contest. The winner of this contest on this given day had beautiful long red hair. How do I know she's upside down? Because of her hair, even his hair. So we make some great pictures. The fog, the light, everything was beautiful. And this was the image that we made that brings everything together. Your attempts, you're pushing this, and the beauty of luck that the lights happen to go off when we fire the remote at that point. My buddy Steve was firing the remote while I was shooting from the front. And the light of the crowd makes that picture. Her hair helps make that picture. And Even with that, I don't think that's the best drum picture ever. No, it's not. He's not in a great spot. But if his arm starts to come across, it blocks his face. If his arm comes out and crosses into the audience, it may not be as good. There could be a better moment there. But to me, it's signature. It's signature enough for other people to feel like it was a success. And sometimes I will just kick myself that I didn't do the job well enough. And other times it's about luck, and you can't hurt, you can't play that. It's just, it is what it is. And then there are times where somebody thinks better of the photographs you create than you do, and you're just happy to see that somebody likes it or will use it. I did actually have somebody on the internet write to me, to my website, with maybe what you consider a 2-page letter, 2 or 3-page letter, of why this picture basically was no good. And I said, listen, I'm sorry that it took all of this time out of your life because of one picture that I made in a split moment. But even Tommy thought it was great. And again, you're really trying to please them, not you. You want to feel good about what you do, but it's about making good pictures of great performers. Ryan Birdie of Soja, one of my favorite people, so accommodating, one of my favorite drum remotes. Remember I said, Daniel rear and back, how could I ever make a better picture? I don't need to make a better picture, just try to make something different. Try to attack that, make something different. And we have this choreographed. I know they all jump at the end of the show. Same jump, same beat. There was a DJ stand right behind him. I'm pointing here, I should be pointing here. Big platform for him to jump off of. He's a nut. He's great. He jumps in and he lands right between the seat and the kit on that last hit. Bam, as he hits the drums as he comes down. He's insane. We did this in New York City, Chelsea Park. We had about 15 minutes between bands to get 4 cameras set up. He's out there with me with the nuts and bolts and wrench, and he put it over here, and then he puts it on something, and the thing starts to spin. I said, why'd you put it over there? And we're getting in arguments, and the very last remote I placed was this one. You know where you have to sort of look up in the sky and say thank you? How, split second, that magenta gel goes off. If that gel doesn't go off while he's up there, there's no picture. Where is his head? Dark hair into the background. Stick is not going to be seen. You're not going to see anything around the outline. From that steam and that gel popping at the same time, pure luck. But it made one of the second best pictures I think I've ever made, shooting drums and the remotes. Access from the front, waiting for them, portraits from the side. That front-facing remote, remember that video I showed you, the one that was pointing forward? This was the byproduct of that camera. A 16 fisheye towards the front. I was like, I got to do this every time now. You start to get excited. The kits get bigger, the amount of cameras get bigger, the hardware gets bigger, it becomes a chore. I feel like it's like boxing a prize fight every time I do this now. Boxers have to kind of take a break. And then all of a sudden, hey, do you mind doing that with me? Oh, my buddy, he plays for Florida Georgia. Would you mind doing his? Connect with him. And I'm going to do the first nutty thing I've ever done. I've got drum remotes on the 14th of June and the 15th of June. And I'm going to have to mentally figure this all out and get batteries charged. More camera placements, different angles, from behind. I find things to mount on framework, like the framework within the structures behind the kits, so I don't have to be standing there. And just firing off different angles, covering off as many angles as I can. He turns to the left or the right or to the front, stays forward. I have pictures from every angle as much as I can. I try to back off now. I think the average is about 4 cameras, 4 or 5, more than enough. So this is the funny part about it. You want to know really how many pictures? And mind you, my dad, God rest his soul, would say, I could have gotten it in 1. That was always his thing. He used a speed graphic. I would have gotten it in 1. You need all those pictures? So I say to him, I said, editing all these pictures. For this particular shoot, it was close to 20,000 images. 19,997 is what he wants to see because I showed him 98. And there was a reason for it. My buddy Steve went nuts. He actually created a stop-motion movie of Tommy Lee playing the drum kit. It was fascinating. Moving around, hands moving from the different angles, cut to the different camera angles, and he made one music video to one of their songs. And they loved it. So I always think that there's always a possibility. Or just maybe one day I'll be sitting going through these and there's more stuff.
Why do you cull through 10,000 images so frequently? What's your workflow? What software do you use?
All right, so my workflow is I use Photo Mechanic, and the question is, how do I cull through all these images? I have fallen asleep more times than not with a laptop on my stomach. Times the laptop has been on the floor when I wake up the next morning. It's tedious and it's not fun. And you know, when I sent all these pictures to Steve to create the music video, it was his idea, it wasn't mine. He said, just send me all the images. Yeah, I don't know that he'd ever want to take that task on again, but he was brilliant in doing what he did. It's a process that you kind of know what you're looking for now. And you know the moments that are really not so great, somebody's going to think are great, but you're really settling. You know that feeling of settling in your stomach when you're looking at, oh, I'll settle for that. That's a nice picture. Is it really a home run? I keep going until that settling feeling goes away, and all of a sudden I go, wow. That's what I look for. And it's going to be a moment, 2 hands, 2 sticks, great posture, great look. There are times drummers look silly with facial expressions. I'm throwing those pictures out. I don't want them to see them. I've too many times I've had people, drummers come back. It makes me look weird. The Florida Georgia line thinks he does a Bart Simpson. You'll see a couple of pictures of that. Front-facing remote at the Journey concert. Little kid, Arnel Pineda, jumps. You catch this image. It's cropped from a horizontal. I mean, you get so lucky with this stuff. It's amazing. But again, it's every time you see a picture like that, it's a gift. Then you come up there, you shoot from the front, shoot from the drum kit. I mean, try to do different things. Again, connect with them. They had a great time. They had a great show. They want some good pictures. Arnel comes back, and you remind them with a picture of what a great time you had. Steve Smith of Journey moves on, comes back. Dean, an amazing drummer, an amazing person, but Steve comes back on the last tour. Steve was one of their original drummers. I think he was a second drummer. I'm not sure. I'm trying to connect with him to do this. You have to understand there's a process to explain this to them too. What do you want to do? What do you, drum, remote, what is that? And you try to send pictures. And, wow, we love the pictures, but what are you talking about? What's a drum remote? And I remember a couple of times, I'll put you down for 2 tickets. Does that work? I don't want tickets to the show. I need a working pass. I need room to bring an assistant if I need to. And I need to just get to your drum kit when it's opened up. And I need your drum tech. That's all I need. Give me the time. I don't even need you out there. And it worked. And when he started seeing pictures, this is The Fabric of Rhythm is another book. It's a collector's series that he just did. Drumming and artwork that he does with drums with lights on the sticks. And it was the inside cover page of the book. That's when I'm loving all of this. Angles, inside the cymbals, looking up, looking around, confetti popping. I mean, it's just so much fun. And it's a gift every time you start looking through those cards. And if you're patient enough to go through the cards, I can't tell you how many times, I'll have to, I start off and going through photo, and I'll get through about maybe a quarter of the pictures, and I have to color the picture. I have to use a color reference to remember where I stopped. But then I forget, did I start from the back or did I start from the front of the packs? Because sometimes I'll start from the rear because it just seems different mentally to do it from the rear because maybe some of the best stuff happened at the end. But then again, they pound out some great stuff at the beginning. It's a mental stress. It really is. And that's why I try not to do too many of them. I did 1 a year for the first 3 years. Last year I did 9. And I think I wanted to be committed. I still do. Chuck Berge, Billy Joel, Madison Square Garden. Great guy. You know what I love Chuck? He wears a white drum kit. He uses a white drum kit. You know why he told me? Because he loves the way the gels change the color of the kit. When a drummer thinks like that, I love the drummer. Great dynamic picture. This is what I'm looking to do with every drummer, is just get that one signature image of them having a great time, great action, great energy. The most fun drummer I've ever seen. Not only does he play with Billy, but he plays for that band Big Shot. They'll go into Mulcahy's one day, and then they'll go on a road to Orlando the next. So it's so much fun. Pink gels, kit starts to turn pink. Red gels, the kit starts to turn red. And you just keep changing it up and trying different places. Find little holes with that fisheye to get through to the drummer. And again, that smile. Man, I want to make him remember what a great time he had. Because then I remember what a great time I had. So this is where this carries on, and we wind this down. And I know you guys have been really patient. Thank you guys for staying online. So I got connected through one of my friends, Doug, to work with Howard Stern, and we worked a couple of gigs together, and very amazing, smart person, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And he saw this picture posted, and he sent this picture to Pat Monahan because he and Pat are very good friends. The relationship starts there. I don't see these guys for a little while. Train doesn't come back to Jones Beach for a while. They're not coming in. A year later, after the winter, I'd send these pictures to them for Christmas, framed images. And as they're coming through Jones Beach, I write to them very quickly. I'm in Argentina on a TV commercial shoot for Nikon. And I said, can I ask you a favor? I mean, I hate to do this, but would you mind just reaching out to Pat and seeing if he'd talk to me? And he came back and said, absolutely. He said, I can't promise you anything, and I don't expect anything. Just thank you for that opportunity. within, I'm guessing, about 45 minutes time, the tour manager or train called and said, what is it that you're trying to do? And that's the beauty and power of relationships and just asking nicely. I really believe it's as nice as you are, as respectful as you are. Say, I want to try something really cool. Are you okay with it? And it helps to have the right people. I buy these All-Stars, by the way. They're Chuck Taylors. They're special Chuck Taylor design. Anyway, but now I go out to train, and I want to shoot their drummer, Scott. So I call the drummer. I'm talking to the manager. He goes, "Oh, Scott's no longer with us." Okay, well, thank you. And all right, forget it. It's not about Scott. It's whoever plays the drums. I don't care who it is. This guy named Drew. He just got his bar, passed the bar, a lawyer, and now he's drumming for Train. And one of the most amazing guys I've ever met. So what I do now, you ever use live view on your camera? Part of the process. Aperture priority, center weighted metering, 2/3 down. Let the camera run the way it wants to run. No focus. I lock the focus down. I tape the focus rings, tape any zoom rings down. But I go into live view, and we have this horizon indicator on the Nikons and the focus control. So I tab out a place on the drum kit that I know he's going to be within that range. Can't fail. I'm at f8, f7.1 with a 16 fisheye because I could go up to 10,000 ISO if I want. And so I'm doing all of this through live view. And that allows me to set up, even in the dark. And I've kind of gotten to that point where I take these videos. Now you see the camera, the shutter's changing. There's no lights out there yet. So into this dark light, it's 40th of a second. Back then with the D4, I was about 4,000 to 5,000 ISO. D5s, I'm jacking the heck out of it, just to get as much as I possibly can. Front-facing remotes, there were 2 remotes up on the other side. Shutter speeds will range. Shutter speeds could go down as low as an 80th or a 60th of a second if the light's dim. If it's up, it could kick about 2,000 to 4,000. Average would be somewhere in around the 800 range is where you want to be. Just remember, those stroboscopic lights will freeze just like a speed light. So I'm looking for those moments too. And again, you're going to win some, you're going to throw away a lot. I don't throw it away. I save it for someday when I'm going to go through all of these discs. But not a heavy hitter, Drew. Very simple guy, simple player. He starts to get more excited as the concert goes on. He moves, he smiles. It's not always about a good, clean kit. When I say a good, clean kit, not a lot of things going on. So you got a great background. You got to watch out the ceilings. And just, I'll raise the question if you don't. Sometimes there's no post-production, a couple of contrast tweaks, darken the background. Sometimes I pull cameras out that are on the opposing side. I just don't want you to see them. They become a distraction. They're an eyesore. Or in the case of Florida Georgia Line, when they played at PNC Bank, and I'm looking up, when they have pyro, what does pyro do? Lights up everything. Every ladder, every rope, every structure in the background. That's a lot of post-production. I owe him pictures, and it's been almost a year, and it's not really nice of me. But I've done a few. But Drew, Pat comes back, and he plays on the drums. So now I got 2 for 1. And, yeah. And then, you know, bongos in the background. Front-facing remote. Again, now I do this every show if I've got a spare camera. It works out really well. This became a signature image for Train, I hope because of the shot that I shot to influence it. A 20mm f1.8 Nikkor. Don't need anything elaborate. So remember I told you I cracked my head open? Last song of one of the shows at PNC. I'm trying to decide, do I stay in the pit? Which, by the way, that's me. I'm shooting and the remotes are going off, so you can see that I'm working efficiently. I decide that I'm not going to stand in here for the last song. I'm going to go back and go be by the kit so I can rip the cameras off really quick. I'm working alone. I run up. You see that railing? I turned one lady's night into a nightmare. I ruined her night. In the middle of the last song, I fell forward. I hit the cast iron rail. It went boom from here to here, wide open. I looked up, and I felt it coming down. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? How the hell am I going to get the cameras off the kit now? And I mean, I could talk that story all day long. A whole bunch of beautiful angels came together that night, and they all got my cameras, and they put them in my car, and they took my car to a hotel locally, 2 local Huntington people that I've become really, really great friends with, the scope is, and they took my car to the hotel until my family came to pick up the car with all the cameras in there. They took them all out and mounts and everything into the hotel because they didn't want them in the car to be stolen. And we got them back the next morning when I got out of the hospital. It was a pretty wild ordeal. Love the pictures. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Ask them what they think or wait for them to respond. The next drummer is about to come, so you're always there. I'll roll through these. I work with these guys time and time again. Led Zeppelin. Train plays Led Zeppelin. The bongs, I put cameras on wherever I can put cameras. I can hang them. I'm going to move them. Shoot from different angles. Get front facing as close to the front as I possibly can without obstructing them. Little kid named Elijah Wood, 18 years old, touring with Shania Twain. I think he's 19 or 20 now. We'll work together again this summer. His father is Mark Wood. He's one of the pioneers of the electronic violin. His mother is a rocker as well. They play together. But again, what I've learned, bring ear protection, go through the song sets, make sure you know the best times to shoot, be efficient, bring money for t-shirts, don't forget your keys, find a class because I've lost my keys before. You don't want to go outside to your car and you need to drive home 3 hours and you don't know where your car keys are. I'm telling you, you get so absorbed in this. Pyro is your best friend. A little bit of post on this, but this kid is one of the most dynamic, powerful drummers I have ever met, and he's about 5 foot nothing, maybe 5'5", 5'6", and he's a skinny little thing, and he hits the drums harder than anybody I've ever seen. So much so he's got to go with metal sticks because he breaks too many drumsticks. He still owes me a set. Powerful lighting, powerful lighting. Jason Bonham comes to Long Island, calls me 3 hours before the show and says, "Oh, would you like to come?" He's friends with Pat Monahan. I write to Pat now that we're friends. "Pat, do you mind cooking me? I saw a picture of you on Facebook. He's coming to Huntington." "Yeah, sure." He never writes me back that morning. "You like to come to the show?" And get cameras, batteries, charge them up, running. Get there at 5 o'clock. I usually set up at noon. I set 5 cameras up. I got the drum tech working with me. Made some of the best images I've ever made. And it's all because of the type of drum kit. So here we are again. The drum tech helps me set up on a cymbal stand. Sets up a whole little setup where I can actually mount my camera. First for me. That's the drum tech. Chris, a great guy. Put cameras on all sides. One thing that he has that Jason runs with is a timpani drum that nobody else had ever used while I've worked. Again, show these guys love, man, because they're the best people ever. Drum techs are the best. And see on the gong, I've got the camera mounted on the gong, pointed back. I want to shoot off every, even if it's not a great angle. What are you going to do? I'll throw the pictures away. I'll work on the other 30,000. That's from behind. That's from the timpani drum. Last minute remote that I posted. The reflections, which I kept going and going. When I'm looking at this stuff, remember I said before, you got to look for that moment. You go through a couple hundred images. I'm seeing them one after the next. Now the problem is with this one, is there's too many good ones. But you just look for the best reflections. And then he posts a picture when they use them. They're great. There's that Bart Simpson look from a good friend who drums for Florida Georgia Line, Sean Fuller. Sean and I are going to work together again. We talk a lot. Nice moment with him leaning forward over the drum kit. Pyro, though, killed me. All of this had to be taken out. It is not a good thing. I was going to say the B word, but it was not fun. Gavin DeGraw, Mike Baker. Here's another powerful drummer, and he's so damn good looking. But we're trying some new things. This was work over the last weekend. I bring my daughter out. We do a lot of testing. You ever do a portrait and you have to set the lights up before that person comes in? Then the person comes in, but you use a prop instead. My daughter's the drum prop. And again, if it's one of her favorite bands, she's happy. If not, it's when are we going to get out of here? But 9 times out of 10, she loves it. Mike, again, just a brilliant drummer. I love the motion. I love the movement. That's what I'm starting to experiment with now. What if I do let the shutter drag and go with a lower ISO? Is it going to work? Is it not? You know, like I said before, is the camera a distraction or does it fit the scene? Do I need to touch it out or don't I? So many questions. So here was my failure, as I'll close with a failure, and maybe you'll see some success in the failure. So, big failure what? I dropped the remote. I dropped the transmitter. Second big failure, the drum tech, just before the last song, they're in an encore set. Gavin DeGraw is playing the piano, Mike's not playing the drums. Mike had just come from the front of the stage where they had a small drum kit. While he's up front, why am I firing remotes in the back? So what do? I turn that switch off on the remote. I can fire this camera, but what's happening? The remotes are not firing. Drum tech comes over, he says, I want to do something. I want to pour water on the drums. You ever see a Blue Man Group? Old school kind of movement of water and motion splashing? I'd never seen that before. And he goes, I said, I'm not going to do that to him. You want to goof with him, you goof with him. He comes over, he goes, no, that's great. I swear to God, this is turns my stomach. Everything. He's pouring water over he's just letting the entire bottle of water fill the entire cavity of the drum skin, and he says, just remember, you got one shot at this, one shot only. And I'm thinking, this remote right there is going to make the most amazing shot of this water starting to come up, and he's going to be right behind. I see it in my head. The sticks are up. He slams down. He comes back up real quick, rapid action. The water starts to explode. He's right in the back. It's the most beautiful picture I've never taken because I didn't turn the remotes back on. I was hand-holding the camera. This is from behind. Even though it was more than one picture, when the water hit the cymbals and he started to hit the cymbals, I started to see water spray. And I thought, wow, that's a dynamic that I've got to challenge myself to do now. And I want to do it with him first because it was his deal first. But if it's not the first ever, maybe this kid, Elijah, would be a great, put him up, set him up in a studio, let him play and just start rapping the drums. I don't know. I'd rather do it on the stage. But we're trying different things, experimenting. I'm telling you, this is just one of those things that started as a nothing thing and a really dumb question. And it's snowballed into something that's been one of the most powerful things I probably will ever do photographically, outside of Dylan, which is now my new project. And he's not a project, he's a person. And, again, a terrific mother, and we've gotten very close. And on over the weekend, I'll go photograph him in the hospital again, and he's in for a week of therapy or prepping for the next big thing, which is going to be very painful a week from now. They're trying to get insurance settled. They'll stay at the Ronald McDonald House again. We'll go in, we'll play. And we'll play Legos for a few hours before we make pictures and have a great time. Are there any questions that you guys have? I know you asked a few during. I know we're probably running way over, and I apologize for that. Good, lock us in. You didn't leave yet, so that's a good thing. Some of you are snacking. I know out in Adorama TV land. Any questions?
If you're shooting for a band, how many pictures would you end up sending them?
The question is, if I'm shooting for the band, how many pictures will I send them? It's a great question because once I had sent several hundred images to a drummer or the band. They said, we don't have time to look through these. You send them just the right amount. What's the right amount? Maybe 20 really good pictures, really strong pictures. I would honestly say I'm not a good editor, but you have to make yourself a good editor. Find the best clean moments you can, maybe send them 25 pictures, tops. And again, work out an arrangement with them. There's got to be a value. There's got to be a trade. There's got to be something coming back to you. You can't do this for nothing. And that value could be in many different things, but there's nothing better than a paycheck that comes back. Basically, the rules are for promotion, I need that promotion. Let's work out a deal for promotion. If things go commercial, you got to work out another deal. Commercial is commercial. Commercial makes everybody money, and that's the way it should live. And there's enough money to go around, trust me. But I would say fairly about 20 pictures to get started. And don't send repetition. Send 20 different unique images. If it's the same picture, they're not going to understand the difference the way a photographer would, so give them the best clean image that makes them look as good as they can. Any other questions? Yes, sir?
What do you do with the memory cards? Do you save them or do you reformat them every time?
Yeah, the question is what do I do with the memory cards? The first thing is to back them up right to the computer and not erase the card until I get to a second drive off the computer. So 2 drives off the computer. This way, if one fails, every drive has a life. Moving part hard drives will fall and fail. SSD will have a lifespan. You have to be very careful. Transitioning images, finding the best images and putting them on backup drives the best way you can. But I don't stop until I have the images in 2 places. Once I go from 3 places, from 1 place to 2 places to 3 places, I erase the cards. But I'm very skittish about that. I mean, look at the deals they have here at Adorama on drives. You don't have to have the biggest, best drives. Some of them are SSD. They're obviously going to be a little more expensive. What's within your budget? I buy a lot of the G-Tech drives at $99 now to 2 terabytes. Some of the drives I see a lot of producers and directors work with that I've worked with through Nikon. I try to look at what they're doing. If they can trust it with their big projects, then I can trust it with my projects as well. It's a great question, though. And don't stop until you feel backed up, because that's the worst thing you can feel is a corrupted disk and then not have anything else to turn to. I've risked that a couple of times, and I've dodged that bullet. Anything else? Any other? Did we have any? Was it say, why is the moron still talking?
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for sharing your time. Listen, thank you all for coming. I really love this. I know you guys do too. Not my, but in your world, not my stuff. Just enjoy this. Whether it's your passion, your addiction, whether it's something that you're connected to, find that personal project and just run with it, whether it's your dogs or, you know, animals or people, someone in your life, a dancer. I used to gravitate toward things my son and daughter would do to try to shoot. My daughter played field hockey. I was going to be the best field hockey photographer. My daughter was a gymnast or a violin. You know, she played the cello. I was going to be the best concert photographer. I stay connected that way, but the emotion of all this to me is, and the challenge every day is just go out and make one different picture that I didn't make before. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you guys tuning in. And if you have any questions, I'm going to pack up a little bit. I would like you guys to turn around and acknowledge Mr. Cliff Mountainer, Nikon Ambassador, Marcus Bell, Nikon Ambassador, Marcus from Australia, two of the top wedding photographers, not in the state, not in the country, in the freaking world, right back there. So
They
I,
didn't do my wedding.
huh?
They didn't do my wedding.
Because when you get Cliff or Marcus, man, that's a value.
I
That's a
nice
great
one in
value.
Bhutan.
Well, go talk to them. Don't talk. I don't shoot weddings. Anyway, have a great night. Everybody get home safe, and thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.
Can I grab you for a second?
Yeah.